Okay, let's do some more artifacts. Let's look at some more. I wrote a little note here. In these boxes of Pedernales points, there's probably Marshall, Baker, maybe Kent, Belverde, Jeddah, Gower, Uvalde, and Bell points. Alright, so some of you might be able to catch that some of these points are not actually Pedernales points. We'll see. I'm going to do my best to try to separate these out into batches that I'm going to label for further examination. So after I show these all on video, I'm going to go back and review the characteristics of these other points. I know there's probably some Jeddah points in here that are classified, grouped as Pedernales. And some of these smaller ones might be, Baker points or Uvalde or Gower. And there might be even some Bell points in here, right? So we got to keep that in mind. Some of you might be able to tell just by the characteristics of the flaking and the way the bases are formed. What I mean by flaking is how they're forming the body of the point in thickness primarily, but also, in the final finishing, they'll do the base first on the Pedernales in most cases, and you can kind of tell the flaking sequence on some of those. We don't have context as far as depth within the site, so that's a handicap. So we've got to go mainly by the stem characteristics. We don't have full blades, and even if we did have full blades, flaking on the blades usually varies more than the actual design of the stem. Like some knappers are better at sharpening than others, for example. But most of the knappers will get the general shape of the stem correct, or within the traditional shape. Right? So the stem is the most important anyway in identifying these things. It's not the material, it's not the flake scars on the blade. It's the stem shape. It's the way that they are hafted. That's the most distinguishing feature, and I think that can be proved, because if you look at if you group these by similarity and they're within the same layer in the ground on a site, and you stick them all side by side, you're going to notice they're made of different materials. So the material's not dictating how they're made. Some are going to be heat treated, some are not. Also, and they could all be raw, they could all be heat treats, they could be mixed, but there's usually, in the vast majority of cases, there are different materials that they're made out of, so it's not the material. On the blades, if you line them all up, the blades are going to be different as far as the sharpening technique. Some are twisted, some are straight, some are wonky. The edges on the blades are going to be different in a lot of cases. So it's not the blade flaking that's going to identify the point itself. Another way you can tell that the blade flaking is not going to identify them is if you end up covering all the bases. And are you able to identify what type of point it is by looking at the blade and the flaking? No. Are you going to be able to identify what point type it is by looking at the material? No. The only way you'll be able to identify them is by the shape of the stem. Okay? That's how you prove that the stem is what determines the type. Okay. So, just by looking at the stem characteristics, we can probably classify these and separate these into different groups, as long as we know the patterns and the seemingly different technologies. This seems like a different technology for this. This is lobed and deeply notched. This is deeply notched, but these ears are not lobed, they're pointed. Also, the symmetry is off. But on this lobed point, the symmetry tends to be pretty good, especially with the level or the length of these ears. Okay, they're not different lengths, as an example. Okay. Impact fracture, probably. I mean, that's been shown in tests as well. It's not just a guess. They've tested and they've shown that this is what an impact fracture can look like. They don't all look like this, but they can look like this. So you must assume, unless there's contrary evidence, that this was hafted to a something that was fired and it caused an impact fracture, or maybe in a very rare case, something hit it, which in that case, that might be an exception. If you're in a fight and you're using this as a knife and your knife gets hit by a club or something hard, then it'll break like this, but I don't know. I would tend to say this was shot at something. Yeah, that's the easiest, simplest explanation. All right. Okay, enough yapping in the beginning. I'll just go through and I'll show them all, because we've already talked a lot about sharpness. I'm not going to go through and test each one for sharpness anymore. We all know that it's always the sharpest right inside the notch usually, and on the stem, and the sides get either worn or they're not sharpened carefully for some reason. I can usually detect more sharpness on the stem, although this one seems slightly ground. I can usually detect a more sharp area somewhere on the stem than I can on the blade. And it's up to somebody to figure out what that is. I don't know if I can figure out why these blades are not sharp, even though the point itself is well made. And this is, I have some of this material. This is a bull gravel type chert. Yeah, it's difficult to work, and you can tell because they've got some width on here, and they're not able to send flakes all the way across easily unless they have a bold flake. See, that's a pretty bold flake, but even with that, it's barely going halfway, or barely going more than halfway. So you end up with a big center. And I don't know, this does not look finished to me. And these edges do feel slightly dulled, but I wouldn't use, well, I don't know. I would use a pressure flaker perhaps on this, but not a percussion flaker. Especially because of the concavity just beyond the edge. You don't want to hit like that little platform if there's a concavity right under it. You've got to modify the edge so that there's a convexity. Modify the surface near the edge so that there's a convexity, so that flakes will carry. So the flakes will peel off and not stop right there where there's a concavity. So yeah, these are skillfully done, but it looks like they're done quickly and with lots of risk. I don't know. This has a short stem on it. This looks like a it is probably a Pedernales, but it might be like a baker or something. The shorter stems could be other point types, because Pedernales is characterized by a long stem in most cases, I think. Short stems could be other points. Yeah, thick right here, thinned blade notched base. Good candidate for Pedernales, but the stem is short, so it may not be a Pedernales. This has a very straight edge on the side. I guess edges that can be edge A and edge B. One edge is good and the other isn't. You know, just like side A and side B. Although this one looks well balanced, you know. It's got two good sides. And it looks like small serrations. Or just very persnickety type napping on it. Yeah. Did I show this one already? Because I remember showing one that had one side worked a lot and the other side not worked. Did I show that one already? Let me see. That would be something if there was two like this. Then we can start to establish a pattern. Is it in here? Or did this get mixed up? I hope not. I don't want to rattle those around too much. But that's interesting. If there's two just like this, that would be interesting. Let me set that aside and make a note. I'll put it on the left. I got to look for that other one. If there's two like that, I want to look at the stems and see if they're the same type of stem. Dang it. I'm going to have to look through that whole other box. All right, let's just try to get through this box. Yeah, different edge treatments, you know, on the finished pieces. Are these different? You really got to sit down and examine these for a long time to see differences, but it seems to me that this one side on this lighter colored shirt is scooped out more than the other side. But on this one, it's symmetrical. Symmetrical scooping out if any. But this one looks favored on one side. You know, subtle differences like that can indicate a different style of napping. Or it might be scooped out more on this side and he just favored that side more, but this napper favored the other side. Maybe left and right-handed stuff. Maybe. It's hard to tell. Everything is hard to tell because there's other possibilities. I think that's a classic overshot. Yeah. Thinning flake from the side overshoots it and ruins everything. Although it does not look finished. You can pretty much tell it's not finished because the edges are completely different. You know, try to find a similar base on one of these other ones and then compare. Yeah. Then you compare the edges. And you can tell which one's not finished. These are similar bases? Maybe not. Let's see. Let's find the bases that are more similar. This is more similar. Look at the edge difference. So it doesn't take much to see which one's not finished and which one is. Okay? The bases and the stems look the same or very similar. So this is not finished. And this one is probably because there's an impact fracture, or what appears to be an impact fracture on it. So it was finished, hafted, and shot. Yep. Yeah, I can't resist but test the sharpness. It's not sharp there. It is a little bit sharp in some areas. And, you know, to be fair, sometimes there's a sweet spot on the edge, and you can use the sweet spot to do cutting and stuff. But a knife edge is supposed to be sharp all the way down. It's supposed to be continuously sharp. I mean, that would make sense. You've got a material that can be sharpened. You need to sharpen it. There's got to be an explanation why it's not that sharp. Why it's sharper inside the notch than it is on the actual edge, the cutting edge. And sometimes it's sharper along the inside of these notches on here too. These are sharper, or the edges are sharper inside there and inside here than they are on the edge. It could be because they're protected. These areas are protected, and there's a lot of rubbing going on in this type of storage environment. Yeah, so. Yeah, that could be it. It could be something as simple as that, which would be a shame because we can't tell exactly how sharp they would have been without damage. But probably just as sharp as this, I guess. Right there, that's a sharp edge right there. This actually is a sharp edge here too. Yep, but not on this side. I see with these delicate ears, they always are a mystery to me why they would make the ears so delicate. If I was making a Pedernales point and I made it like that, it would feel funny. When I make a Pedernales point, it's more like this one, or something hefty, hefty, not delicate. This might not be a Pedernales, it might be a Baker. Now let me get the book out. Let's see. Where is it? I did a repair on the book, so it's not in its usual place. It's back on the shelf over there. Yeah, I put a piece of cardboard stock on behind the cover, so it would flatten out, and I taped the edges. So now it's flat. Yeah, so we can abuse the book even more now. Baker points. See the bakers? See how delicate? Delicate. And kind of delicate. So, where is it? Where's the delicate one that I just put down? This one. Does it qualify as being a delicate? It might just qualify, because the Baker does have these little thinning, tiny flutes sometimes. See, I think they grouped them in categories like this one here, and this one here, and this. See how these are kind of bow-legged, these are kind of pointy, and these are kind of constricted between the notches. I have a lot of them here that are actually constricted between the notches, but it's bowed out like this down at the bottom, kind of, sort of. So this might be a Baker, as an example. See how it's got lobed ears, kind of like this one. And yeah, these are usually smaller than Pedernales, but they're also resharpened. Stuff like that. Okay. As an example, just an example, there are other types that are similar to Pedernales. So that might not be a Pedernales. So it's something that I'll probably put in a different box. and re-examine them and make sure that it would be good to separate that out of this Pedernales quote unquote group. Okay. Extremely thin blade. Can we get a width to thickness ratio? Let's see if I can figure out what I did with my calipers. Okay, I found them. Yeah, I was losing them earlier. That's the only reason why they're on top. Anyway, we got 35 millimeters by 5. That's 7 to 1. Yeah, 7 to 1, almost exactly. Very good. And how wide is it? An inch and 3/8. You know, a lot of guys make their Pedernales points really wide. Another inch and is it inch and a half, or a little bit more. A little bit less than inch and a half. So I could measure all these widths of ones that do not look resharpened and get a average, and it's not going to be 2 inches. It's going to be less than 2 inches. A lot of guys are making Pedernales points that are 2 inches or more wide. I don't think that's correct. This one probably a 7 to 1 as well as, you know. This is 36 millimeter by 6, so 6 to 1. Very similar, these two. Yeah. Different material. Is it different blade flaking? Not really. It's about the same. But what about the tips? We don't know the tips. We don't know if it constricted a lot with a needle tip, or it was a tip like let's see, is there a complete tip in here? Sometimes they're arched tips. Sometimes they're very pointy straight. Sometimes they have a constriction like a cuneate tip. So they might have different tips on them, which would mean that the tips varied, and what distinguishes them would be the stems. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. This seems familiar. Did I already go through this box? If I already went through this box, I'm going to get upset. I don't think I showed this one. Some of these are so similar that I think I've already shown these. It feels like I've already shown this one. But I would have shown this one. I don't remember showing this one, so I think we got a different box. Alright, so what happened here? They really made a long stem on this one. It could have been reworked by another culture, or they might have been trying to redo the stem, or they just wanted a longer hafting element. I don't know. Maybe they wrapped cordage around it and just used it without a handle as a knife. It just wrapped cordage around it. You know, it just extended this stone, the stone stem, so they could hold it like a knife, like this. Just wrap cordage around it. That would be my guess. They just made this into the handle so they wouldn't have to haft it into something. Yeah. And it seems like I've seen this one before, but maybe not. Heat damaged. Yeah, they all start looking the same after a while. I think that's heat damage. Yeah. It's a heat pop. Very thin. Those pointy-eared ones. Not exactly like that one. Expanding pointy ears, but Pedernales, you know, according to the book, does have expanding pointy ears sometimes. Let's see. Elemental P. See, it has expanding ears sometimes. And it has that bow-legged appearance sometimes. And it has lobed ears sometimes. So there's a lot of variation that they consider. These are supposedly, you know, archaeologically documented to be within the same layer and the same grouping with the culture that's supposed to be Pedernales. So that it varies a lot. And some of these kind of I was going to say grouped together, but they grade into each other into similar types that are within the same time period, like Baker. I think it's the same time period as the Pedernales. And Pedernales also overlaps with Marshall, although Marshall is later. They do overlap a little bit. So yeah, this one is a pointy stem. Reworked. Thin. I can't tell why it's broken. It has a steep rework. Or if it's finished, it's really wonky. It does not appear to be finished. Although it could be, I don't know. Stem is kind of short, so it might not be Pedernales. Yeah, we're starting to get a little redundant in the way that these look. We can pretty much, after seeing quite a bit of these already, we can pretty much tell that it's going to be more of the same. Let's see. I have the other boxes here. So you can see they all kind of start looking the same. When they start looking the same, it's time to move on, because then we get too used to the way it looks, and we miss certain details. Let's do the width to thickness ratio. 38 millimeter by 7. Right, 7 by 38. It's a little over 5:1. If you're making them thinner than, what was the best one, 7:1? If you're making them thinner than 7:1, they're not matching. So, you know, these that we've measured so far that appear to be the thinnest. And I don't know, I haven't measured what's the thickest. Now these that are really wonky, that have a big old blade on them and the stem's already made, but the barbs are all still fat, I don't think these are Pedernales. I think there's something else. The barbs are just too big. It's like, let me see. Uvalde? I don't know. Let me just take a quick look here. There was one in here that had the barbs that go almost all the way down to to the base level. You know. See, Marshall has barbs that go almost down to the level of the bottom of the stem. But there's another one too. And I think it might be Uvalde. Let's see. If it isn't, we'll look at something else. No, it's not Uvalde. Uvalde has sometimes delicate ears. And it's kind of wonky, like, I don't know, what is it? No, Gower. Something like that. And it's not that one. Which one is it? Is it Baker? Well, the bell, but the bells are not notched in the middle. Well, it's not Baker. This is Baker. So let me think here. Let's see. What did I write down? Bulverde. I already looked that up, didn't I? Yeah, Bulverde doesn't have long barbs. It's just the Marshall. Anyway. Anyways, I had to look through the whole book, one page at a time, to find the ones that I'm thinking about. But there are some that we have in this collection that have barbs that go way down to the base level, and they're very widely notched and they're substantial. And I saw it in either that red book or in another book. And it has a smaller stem. Yeah. So, I don't know. I could wrap it up because it's starting to get redundant. It's just all going to be pretty much the same. Yeah, I think I'll wrap it up because these are pretty much all the same as we've seen before. This one is 33 by 7. That's 6 to 1. No, 5 to 1. Between 5 and 5 to 1, 6 to 1. These edge treatments are pretty similar to what we do today, when we just pick at it and make it regular. Yeah. It's not like the edge treatment here. The edge treatment here is different on Pedernales. On some of these points, the edge treatment is pretty much the same all the way around. But here, there is a difference in treatment down here than up here. Let's see. It's not always the case, right? This is nice and well done. Looks the same. Same quality as the other edge, all the way around. So yeah, that varies, and that could be a distinguishing feature on the type, whether they do different edge treatments on the stem and the blade. Big old pop out there, and one edge worked and one not. See, we got another one. So we're starting to see some of these are worked only on one side. Although this might not be finished. Yeah, it's probably not finished, just broken in manufacture, but you see how you have an asymmetry there. Now, to be fair, they could knock this back and make it symmetrical with that. It's just not finished. But there's also a possibility that they'll just leave this side wonky and, just finish that side out. It's very similar. No, that's not even similar base types. But anyway, the technique might be might be common. You know. So if you hide the bases and they've got this technique where they leave one side wonky and one worked, you might say, oh, that's the same type. No, not same type, because the stems are different. Yeah. All right. I know it's obvious. I know, Captain Obvious. I don't want to be Captain Obvious. Some will say, you're not being Captain Obvious, you're being Captain Stupid. Yeah. I've heard that so many times, it's funny. You might say, well, if you heard it so many times, why do you keep doing it? Can't help it. Can't be fixed. Haven't you heard? Can't fix stupid. Yeah. Why try to fix it? When you can't. I like this style, yeah. Most people like this style. I think. I don't know. From what I've seen comments, they tend to like the bow-legged style. And at least one other guy likes it. I know, not a good sample size, yeah, I know. 39 millimeter by 7. 5 times 7 is 35. 7 times 6 is 42. So between 5 and 6 to 1. Is it completely finished out, or was it wider to begin with? I don't know. It looks completely finished out. I don't know. I don't know really. These with the bow legs, a lot of times they don't have any barbs, or just barely. And it can't be a coincidence that they're all like that. Maybe it can be. You know, they're just all found with blades that have been reworked. How did they get the edges that thin? 2 words. With practice. Same tools. You can see a guy make cruddy points with the same tools as you see a guy make beautiful points with. It's the same tools. And the same techniques. Just one guy has more practice. That's it. It's not no magic flakers. They don't sprinkle magic dust on their tools and then make them like this. They might be sprinkling magic dust and sniffing it. I don't know what they would be sniffing, but that could be a possibility. The ones that are sniffing stuff they shouldn't be are making wonky points. Yeah. And breaking them and not finishing them out and only sharpening one side, they might be doing a little bit too much of the little magic dust on the side, yeah. Who knows? Nobody knows. You can only speculate and have a little bit of fun with it. Now see, that might be a Jetta. There's no flute. There's no fluting. There's some thinning going on, but it's not like it's a flute going up. Like, it's not distinct. It's not a distinct flute going in there. It's just thinned randomly. The blade goes in really fast. It's not like these that are parallel sided blades. These are, but you know, it could be just the nature of resharpening. It may just be, you know, sharply inward napped because of the blade damage on the sides. They had to do it that way. I don't know, but there's some Jettas that look like this. Let's see. Did I show a Jetta yet from the book? If not, you're gonna see it if I did, you're gonna see it again anyway. Because I'm gonna look. JK. J comes before K. E comes before O. See that? See how the blade sides are more pointy inward? I mean, they're more, I don't know, quickly going toward the tip. You know what I mean? They go in more acutely. I think that's what you would call it. See, it could be this Jetta right there. And not a Pedernales. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. So I'll probably like put this in the Jetta stack. What's the width to thickness ratio here? Let's say that's like a 43. I keep getting out of the frame here. That's 43, right? You're going to check on me, make sure I'm doing it right. By 6 and a 7-1. Pretty darn good. And it has some what appeared to be, you know, fairly sequential looking flakes. It said one of the characteristics is sequential flaking. You can't go by that too much because it varies, but you can go by the stem shape and the strategy in creating the stem. And there's no big pop outs for the notches. It's just not regular. It's just regular notching. Yeah. All right. So that's a Jetta, I would think. Okay, 42 minutes. I think we're done looking at Pedernales because they're starting to get redundant. Yeah, it's just the same, pretty much the same old, same old. That might be a Jetta. The edge treatments are like what we do these days. They're just regularized. There's no attempt at serrations. It's just regularized. It is thinned, but the edge thinning, this just looks like a bunch of damage. It went down the edge. Something hit the whole edge. It's impact damage probably. But yeah, it just looks like it's thin and regularized after the major thinning on many of these blades. Yeah, to get them regular. Now, I don't try to do the regularization on my knives the same as these. It might end up being similar. I don't look at the edge treatment to try to duplicate artifacts as far as edge treatment goes. I mean, I've done it. I've tried to do it sometimes, but I'm never really successful at it because it takes a lot of time to get used to doing it the way they would be doing it, shaping it the way they would be shaping it, I should say. It takes time to get used to shaping it the way they were shaping it. There's different ways you can do this. You can do this with aggressive pressure, passive pressure, pressure-assisted percussion, percussion-assisted pressure, indirect percussion, maybe not direct percussion, but you can do indirect percussion with horizontal punch or indirect percussion with vertical punch. So how many variations is that? It's like at least 6 different variations for obtaining the same result. Okay, so we don't know how they did it, but we know we know what it looks like after it's shaped, and there's different techniques that can be used to obtain the same shape. Okay. Probably one reason why there's so much confusion with these is because it's difficult to explain that there are variations in making the same shape. There are variations in tools that can make the same flakes in the same shape. And there's variations in the flint knappers. Yeah. Impact fracture. What are the variations in the flint knappers? Well, one guy could be doing this super fast and the other guy could be taking all day. Yeah. Did it take all day or did it take just a few minutes? It depends on the napper. That's another way of how did they do it? You know? We don't know. There's too many variations. I know that. That's a bummer. Now, why it's broken? To me, it looks like you just put it down on the ground and started stepping on it. Yeah. It could be a finished point with that in the middle because they don't care about that stuff. And this is the result of being thrown at something that didn't like being thrown at. Yeah. That animal got highly ticked, and that point shows it. Yeah, that could be the explanation. You don't think animals like being shot? No, unless you hit them with excellent shot placement, they're going to get ticked, and they're going to run, and they're going to do all sorts of things, and you're going to get back your points. Some of them are going to look like that, and you're going to go, dang, that took me all day. And I walked 3 seasons to get the stone. I started in summer and came back next spring. Yeah. All right. I had to sleep in the bear cave all winter with that in my pouch with a bunch of other stones that weighed 80 pounds. You never know. Or he could have just gone down to the creek and got it made in 5 seconds. I don't know. You know, made the preform or the blank in 5 seconds and came back to camp. Didn't have to carry it anywhere. So pretty. And it's good material. So this napper took advantage of the good material. Yeah. Good material. Who knows if it's raw or heat treat? Who knows? Ripples sometimes will indicate a heat treat, but not always. A lot, you know, we didn't even discuss rippling on the surface of these. You know, rippling, this kind of stuff, ripple. Is this heat treat? It might be. It's got the rippling. We didn't even discuss that. The more rippling it has, the more inclined I am to say that it's a heat treat. But you never know. Could be raw. Could be high-grade raw stuff. Like this one could be high-grade raw or a heat treat. This one here, I don't know. I know the material. It's hard to work with, and obviously they had some difficulty, but it can be heated. You still have difficulty even with a heat treat. Yeah. And again, you get asymmetrical sides, so they worked one side more than the other. What kind of tool is it that you work one side more than the other? Probably knives. If it's a projectile point, I would think that you would want to retain your symmetry. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter. There needs to be more tests done on asymmetrical projectile points, on actual projectiles. Now this is almost complete. It's just got one tip ding. Or they were trying to finish it out and they didn't, and they discarded it because it was not cooperating. That's a huge turtleback, and there was some good attempts at trying to get that out of there. This reminds me of Owl Creek, but it's probably not. Although I don't know. Still got a lot of dirt on it. It might be an Owl Creek with a lot of concrete. Yeah, that stuff is nasty. Even though it can be napped well where there's no concrete, when it starts to get tough, like in the middle of the nodule sometimes, that happens. And this looks like it was discarded and never used. Although you could do some damage with it, carving with it, something like that. You can do damage to wood with it. Yeah, it's an interesting heat pop. Sometimes they might just throw it in the fire after they discarded it. Like, they come back to the camp, they're sitting around the fire, they unwind these things, they're broken. They take them off of their hafts and they just chuck them in the fire. That could be it. Yeah. It broke on the hunt and they don't want to fix it or whatever. Or they're napping around the fire and they make a mistake. Just throw it in the fire. Could be. I don't know. Something I would do probably. Bad luck. Give it a little fire funeral. Yeah, if it's one of those times where you're napping around a fire, where do you think all the bad points are going to go? Where do you think all the frustrating things are going to end up? In the fire. That almost looks like a gower. See, the stem is in a different plane than the blade. Just like some of the other gowers. See, with Pedernales, they're pretty good about keeping everything in the same plane. I mean, time after time after time after time. Well, this one not. This one's got a wart on the stem. It's so good at thinning, but they leave a wart on the stem. See that? Why? Why so good at thinning? Maybe it's a flake. See that? That's original flake scar. That's why it's so thin. Yeah. It's got a little wart on the stem there. It's thin because they made it on a flake. Yeah. Anyway, this looks like a gower with the stem on a different plane than what I was trying to show on the Pedernales. The Pedernales is all in the same plane. Time after time after time. It's all the same. You look at them all and it's all on the same plane. So you come up with one that has a skewed stem and you go, aha, that might not be Pedernales. Stick it on the other side. Yeah, something happened with that. They unhafted it and throw it in the fire. Yeah. That's the story for that one, and I just made up. Yeah. Nice material. Very thin. Impact fracture made it thinner. Yeah. But it didn't break across the notches because they made it nice and thick there, relatively speaking. You notice that I haven't seen any broken across the notches. Yeah. This is close to being broken, but no, there's none that I can see, although I probably have some in the collection that are broken across the notches, but there's not that many. They don't break right there. They break a little higher or a bit lower. Smart. Yeah, see, the plane is different. The stem plane is different from the base plane. So I don't think that's a Pedernales at all. Nope. And it's all because the stem is skewed. It's a stem characteristic. Yeah. And by all means, comment in the comment section what you think might be happening. You won't hurt my feelings. I grew up in a time where, we used to say, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Nowadays, it's the opposite. Yeah. You're too weak to throw sticks and stones, and your words hurt me very much. That's today. You're too much of a wuss to throw sticks and stones, and your words hurt me a lot. That's today's sayings. All right. I like that blade. The reason why I use bold flaking in a lot of my knapping is not because I see it very often, but because I like it also. I like the bold random flaking. I liked it. I like it better than seeing, this kind of stuff. Although this is nice too, I like this better. Just aesthetic wise. Risk wise, it's dicey to knap that way. But I will take the risk just so I can feel a lot better about how it looks. Yeah, I am that shallow. All right, I'm done. I'm done looking at these. They're starting to become redundant, and I'm getting deja vu over and over and over again. And I don't know if that's serrations. It might be just damage. Yeah. And I could look at them more, but I would be to continue with it. I would be separating these. I would have to go into the mode of separating these into different groups, because we pretty much have a large enough sample size to understand what the edges look like and what the surfaces look like, what the stems look like, and all that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. This will be like box number 3, and I'll stop, and I'll go on to another type of point. Okay, that's it.